Manchester United terminating their contract with Zlatan Ibrahimovic ahead of a move for the big Swede stateside to join MLS club LAC. Now, Gab, we're going to start with you because Zlatan's CV really speaks for itself. It is a sparkling CV. So what's the legacy he's leaving behind in Europe?
I think he's going to be remembered as one of the top players that we've seen in the last 15 years. For me, easily one of the top five. So rare to see a man of his size and his presence with that incredible skill set. A man who's won in so many different countries. He's won everywhere he's been. 13 league titles he's won in Holland, in Spain, in Italy, and of course most recently in France. And interesting how I think later in his career he became sort of the Zlatan superhero character, and then people found some aspects of his personality that were often annoying or off-putting before when he was very much a villain. He almost learned to sort of parody himself, and I think in that sense he became even more popular.
Raf, what about you? Where does he rank? Is he one of your top 5 players in the last 15 years too?
Not quite top 5, because if you're going to go back 15 years, you still got Rivaldo, the original Raul, all these guys. Henry could still coincide with him, but of course he left a huge mark in terms of individual skill. A guy who scored so many outrageous goals, making kind of almost karate moves, bringing different kind of movement into football. I think that will forever be remembered. I think unfortunately for him, because of his constant move, he didn't perhaps leave that much of an imprint on any of the clubs he was at, with the exception of PSG, where he spent 4 years, longer than anywhere else. And of course he always got a little bit unlucky when it came to the Champions League, always seeming to leave the club, then went on to win the title. So I think he'll be remembered as an outrageously talented individual who played football by himself a little bit, and sometimes I think that was to the detriment of his clubs.
Gab, I see you shaking your head a little bit over there. What didn't you like about what Raf said?
No, I was thinking about what he said about, he won't be remembered apart from PSG as sort of a hero at those clubs. I wonder though if in some ways that doesn't actually enhance his reputation in terms of an individual, because we've seen it so often. We've seen players go to clubs, be successful, and then win all these trophies as passengers because they're at a Bayern or Real Madrid or Juventus or whatnot. His route was different. He was always at a big club, but he always won stuff, and then he'd move to another place and he'd win again. To me, that is the most incredible thing. And one of the criticisms was that a lot of his clubs often didn't play great football because it went through him. I mean, we're talking about a guy who could move to a football club and force the club to become all about him, and then 2 years later or 3 years later move somewhere else. To me, he embodies a certain type of footballer in the modern era.
Gentlemen, let's come in studio now. What do you guys think? Paul Mariner, we were speaking about this a little bit earlier. Where does he rank? Top 5 in the last 15 years?
I think if you factor in what does a team need? They need goals. Every coach, every manager, they need somebody who can put the ball in the back of the net. If you look at his goal-scoring record for club football, it's absolutely ridiculous. But what I noted at the bottom of the graphic was 116 games, 62 goals for Sweden. Now, Sweden have not exactly been a powerhouse in world football, so it just shows you at what every single level that he's played, every single league that he's gone to, he's entertained the fans and he's pleased the coach over and over because of the guaranteed goals that you get from a player like this. That's what impresses me about it.
Stevie?
There are very few players, and people talk about Zlatan going and joining good teams, big name teams with big name players, but there are very few players that can actually go to a big club and actually raise the standards. And every single club he's gone to, he's raised the standard of where that club has been.
Well, where do you think he's done that the most then? Because when you think of Zlatan, as we said, he is quite the traveller. Which club do you identify him with the most?
Well, you don't. I think Raf said it best. He hasn't particularly left a legacy at any club. If you were to push me, I'd maybe say PSG. But other than that, he's just gone and being the man. He's been the man at 5 clubs? How many players do you know that have done that?
I think what was staggering, and I admit I was one of the guys that wrote him up. I didn't think that he would be a success at Manchester United. And I know people say, well, it was coming towards the end of his career. Even so, as soon as he got into that building, I knew that everyone knew he was the man.
Gab's shaking his head again.
I'm not bothered because Gab, did you think that he was going to score 15 plus goals at Manchester United last year?
Yeah, I did. I actually made a bet that he would score 20. But I think this in some ways fits into the Zlatan narrative, right? When he was, I've been living in England for a long time, and for a long time it was about, oh look, he's a flat track bully. Look at the foreign weirdo with the long hair and stuff, and then he goes and he plays a proper team in the Champions League and he loses, and there's no way he could ever do it in England or against England defenses. And then he goes and he plays Sweden, play England, and he scores what? I think he scores 3 goals, 4 goals. He's got that absurd overhead kick from 40 yards out, and then all of a sudden people pay attention. And then he comes and he moves to an English club, and not just any English club, but the biggest English club of all, in a year that which is supposed to be their rebirth with Mourinho and whatever else. And he dominates. He certainly dominated for the first 6-7 months of the season, and then of course later he gets hurt. I mean, to me, this is Superman stuff that he delivered, and he does have imperfections, and maybe he could have been even greater if he'd made different choices earlier in his career. But this is pretty impressive. To keep going at this age, to play at this level, I mean, you can only admire his professionalism.
Well, comparing Zlatan to Superman is a big thing, but I love that comparison, Gab. But Raf, do you like that comparison?
I do like the comparison. I'm just wondering what his kryptonite was. It was probably Pep. Pep, Lex Luthor, his enemy. But I just, the one problem I have with him is that I feel that he was one of the